So today we are going to discuss about hazard analysis and critical control points. That is HACCP. What is HACCP? It is a systematic preventive approach to food safety, which is most important for everybody, that addresses physical, chemical, and biological hazards as a means of prevention rather than finished product inspection. HACCP is used in the food industry to identify potential food safety hazards so that key actions known as CCP, that is critical control points, can be taken to reduce or eliminate the risk of the hazards being realized. The system is used at all stages of food production and preparation processes. But the most important point is, what is the necessity of HACCP? You know, food safety has been of concern to humankind every time, and this concern has grown very much in recent decades to protect people against foodborne diseases and food adulteration. There are many reasons for this, which we will discuss in detail. First of all, foodborne diseases is of most concern problem, which remain one of the most widespread public health problems in the contemporary world and an important cause of reduced economic productivity despite progress in food science and technology. You know, there is increasing incidence of many foodborne diseases these days. For example, salmonellosis and campylobacteriosis in many regions of the world. Even emerging foodborne pathogens include Listeria monocytogenes, verocytotoxin producing Escherichia coli, Campylobacter species, foodborne nematodes, etc. An increase in the number of vulnerable people like elderly, immune compromised individuals, the undernourished, and individuals with other underlying health problems. Industrialization and increased mass production leading to increased risks of food contamination. Even urbanization is one of the important factors for necessity of HACCP, which lead to a more complex food chain and thus better possibilities for food contamination. New food technologies and processing methods causing concern either about the safety of the products themselves or the eventual consequences due to inappropriate handling during preparation. Even changing lifestyles depicted by an increasing number of people eating outside the home in food service or catering establishments, at street food stalls, or in fast food restaurants. Increased worldwide tourism and international trade in foodstuffs, leading to a greater exposure to foodborne hazards from other areas. Increased contamination of the environment, increased consumer awareness of food safety, and lack of or decreasing resources for food safety. So in the light of the above these regions, there is an increasing concern about the food safety, the lack of sufficient resources, and the recognition of the limitations of traditional approaches to food safety assurance, which have accentuated the need for a cost-effective food safety assurance method. The HACCP system has proven to be such a system. Now, there are few important HACCP terminologies I have mentioned in these slides. You can go through these terms like hazard, contamination, control to be used as a verb and as noun, control measure, corrective action, control point, critical control point, which is very essential point at which control can be applied so that a food safety hazard can be prevented, eliminated, or reduced to an acceptable level. It is the last step in the flow of food where a hazard can be controlled. Next, critical limit, deviation, flow diagram, HACCP, HACCP plan, risk, prerequisite programs, monitor, corrective action, step, validation, and verification, which includes those activities other than monitoring that determine validity of the HACCP plan and that the system is operating according to the plan. You go through all these terms. Now, most important thing which will come in everybody's mind before going in detail about HACCP is what is the hazard. It is the potential to cause harm to consumer from the safety aspect or the product from spoilage aspect. And the hazard associated with food safety can be of three types, any of the three types: physical, which includes extraneous matter; chemical, which may include pesticide, insecticide, radionuclides, carcinogenic components, allergens, etc., and biological in nature, which will include pathogens, microbial, toxins, etc. On the basis of classification with different combinations of hazard class as positive or zero for no hazard is designated, and then it is categorized in 4 categories, that is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Category 1 includes special category for products which is meant for sensitive consumers like baby foods. Category 2 contains either of the 2 hazards mentioned above. Category 3 includes one hazard. Any of the one hazard is present in category 3, and in category 4 there is no presence of no hazard. So the probability that a hazard will be realized is called risk and is assessed as low, medium, and high. It is identified by the 3 modes. First one is failure modes, effect analysis, in which is applied to the process and includes systematic listing of each step of the process and then listing every mode of failure of these steps that can affect the quality of the end product. Next is fault trees. Fault which may occur in the final product is stated, and each process step involved in manufacturing that product is identified with reference to its relevance in causing the stated fault. Next is Delphi technique, in which a group of experts from different disciplines arrive at a consensus regarding the risk which is attached to a process or a product, done through questionnaire circulated to process workers, followed by discussion. First of all, questionnaire is filled, then on this filled questionnaire, discussion is organized on the answers by the group of experts, and until an informed decision is reached on the risks involved. So there are 3 types of hazards. Physical hazards, which includes presence of hairs, stones, stems and seeds, bone fragments and feathers, matchsticks, whatever from outside, jewelry, nails, nuts and bolts, buttons, BDs and cigarettes. Chemical hazards include cleaning agents, adulterants, excess of permissible additive, non-permissible additives, veterinary residue, and pesticide residues. Biological hazards can be of 2 types, that is invisible and visible. Invisible hazard will include bacteria, yeast, protozoa, mold, viruses, etc. Whereas visible biological hazards will include fly, worms, cockroaches, caterpillars, weevils, etc. Now, let us see principles of HACCP. HACCP is based around 7 established principles, which is very important. Principle 1. Conduct a hazard analysis, for which plants determine the food safety hazards and identify the preventive measures the plant can apply to control these hazards. According to Principle 2, identify critical control points, in which procedure in a food process at which control can be applied, and as a result, a food safety hazard can be prevented, eliminated, or reduced to an acceptable level. According to Principle 3, establish CCP, establish critical limits for each critical control points, in which is the maximum or minimum value to which a physical, biological, or chemical hazard must be controlled at a critical control point in order to prevent, eliminate, or reduce to an acceptable level. According to Principle 4, establish critical control point monitoring requirements, as monitoring activities are very much necessary to ensure that the process is under control at each critical control point. According to Principle 5, establish corrective actions which is to be taken when monitoring indicates a deviation from an established critical limit. Corrective actions are intended to ensure that no product injurious to health or otherwise adulterated as a result to the deviation enters commerce. According to Principle 6, establish record-keeping procedures. The HACCP regulation requires that all plants maintain certain documents, including its hazard analysis and written HACCP plan, and records documenting the monitoring of critical control points, critical limits, verification activities, and the handling of processing deviations. According to Principle 7, establish record-keeping procedures. The HACCP system is working as intended. Validation ensured that the plants do what they were designed to do, that is, they are successful in ensuring the production of the safe product. Verification ensures the HACCP plan is adequate, that is, working as intended. Now, implementation of HACCP. It is a system that assists organizations to obviously identify potential food safety hazards in the entire food supply chain and to take preventive measures for their control. It focuses on the prevention of hazards rather than relying on the end product testing. Prevention of hazards is main aim. So, sequence of 12 steps. Sequences which is included in the guidelines developed by the Codex Committee on Food Hygiene is the recommended approach to develop a HACCP program. First step is to assemble HACCP team, for which setup of a multidisciplinary team that includes representatives from all the divisions, that is production, sanitation, quality control, food microbiology, etc. This team should be assigned specific segment of the food chain to be covered in the HACCP system. At step 2, describe product, for which draw up a full description of the product for which the HACCP plan is to be prepared, including product composition, structure, processing conditions, packaging, storage and distribution conditions, required shelf life, and instructions for use, etc. are mentioned. At third step, identify intended use. At this step, use of the product by the end user or consumer, you need to determine where the product will be sold as well as the target group who will purchase the product. Step 4. Construct flow diagram, for which one need to carefully examine the product or process and produce a flow diagram around which to base the HACCP study. At fifth step, on-site confirmation of the flow diagram. The HACCP team should confirm the processing operation against the flow diagram during all stages and hours of operation and amend the flow diagram if it will be necessary. At sixth step, list all potential hazards associated with each step. Conduct a hazard analysis and consider any measures to control the hazards. So using the flow diagram, the team should list all the hazards, including biological, chemical, or physical, that may reasonably be expected to occur at each process step and describe the preventive measures that can be used to control such hazards. At step 7, determine critical control points, CCPs. To use a decision tree with yes or no answers to facilitate the determination of CCPs. This we will discuss in last slide. Step 8. Establish critical limits for each critical control points. Do normally derive from specifications included in the food legislation of a country or in national or international standards. At 9th step, establish a system of monitoring each critical control point, which is the scheduled measurement or observation of a CCP to determine conformation to its critical limits. The monitoring procedures must be able to determine loss of control, if any, at the critical control point. The program of observations or measurements should properly identify for each critical point. Important thing is who is to perform monitoring and checking, when monitoring and checking are performed, and how these monitoring and checking are performed. All records and documents associated with monitoring critical control points must be signed by the persons doing the monitoring. At 10th step, establish corrective actions. The HACCP team should develop specific corrective actions and document them in the HACCP plan for each critical control point in the HACCP system so that they can deal with the deviations when they occur. Such corrective actions should include proper identification of the person responsible for implementation of a corrective action, actions required to correct the observed deviation, and action to be taken with regard to products manufactured during the period when the process was out of control, and written reports of measures taken. At step 11, establish verification procedure. To ensure that the HACCP system is working correctly, the procedure should include the frequency of verification, which should be conducted by a responsible and independent person. Example of verification include auditing methods, random sampling and analysis, etc. And finally, step 12, establish documentation and record keeping, which is very important. The HACCP system requires efficient documentation and accurate record keeping. For example, hazard analysis, identified critical control points and their limits, including revisions, if any, should be documented. Examples of records are critical control point monitoring records, records of deviation found, and corrective action taken on them. So these are 12 steps. Now let us discuss about example of decision tree to identify the critical control point. First step is, do preventive control measures exist? If no, then is control at this step necessary for safety measurement? If no, then it is not a critical control point. It should be stopped. If yes, then modify the step, process or product and do the and then again check, do preventive control measures exist? If yes, then is the step specifically designed to eliminate or reduce the likely occurrence of a hazard to an acceptable level? If no, then could contamination with identified hazards occur in excess of acceptable level, or could these increase to unacceptable levels? If no, then it is not a critical control point and it is stopped. If yes, will a subsequent step eliminate identified hazards or reduce likely occurrence to acceptable level? If yes, then it is not a critical control point and it is stopped. And if no, then it is a critical control point. If this step specifically designed to eliminate or reduce the likely occurrence of a hazard to an acceptable level, if it is yes, then again it is a critical control point which should be taken care. So this is an example of decision tree to identify the critical control points which should be taken care to maintain safety of the particular food product. Now, similarly, HACCP worksheet can be prepared in the same way. That's all about HACCP. Thank you.